Hello and welcome to a new type of content called Fresh Surfs, where instead of doing the deep dives in a video, I will go live and go through a few characters that just don't have a lot of story behind them really, but they are cool characters anyways. And I asked for this on Twitter, and these were some of the characters that you would like to know more about. So let's go through them and see what they are about, or at least what we can find about them. I have, of course, prepared the content already, so usually I would go through the art, go look at the other art that the artist makes, and go through the stories that are available. And then sometimes there are some characters linked to them, and these can be interesting as well. And then after that I just put all of this information together and make something out of it at least. And sometimes it's a little bit more derailed, and sometimes it's really nice and coherent. But for these characters, like there are some that have their own story, like Kaalia of course, or Katilda has her own one story, and otherwise she's just a little bit bland in the story, to be honest, up till now. But Roon, for example, is really popular, but does not have a real story behind him, or at least it's really short, and it just does not really give you too much. So if we dive deep into the character, this should give a little bit more of a backstory to him, hopefully. Or maybe we can figure it out together, which is what appealed me to go do this live. So first up, Yuriko. Yuriko is a ninja from Kamigawa, where we will be going later, I think next year. It will be a new world, so Yuriko probably will not be there. But we don't necessarily know from which time period Yuriko is, so it might be that this person is there later as well, although they do not look very Neon-like, so I don't think so. We can see in the art here, it's just really focused on the character. Usually in the story, at least, it says that she has a mask that is always on, which is not in the art, which I found. She doesn't have it on in the art, but it is here. Which I found peculiar, but she does wear it next to her anyways, so you can see that this is why she's called the tiger, or claw of the tiger. She also has claws. I don't know how she uses them, maybe to climb, more like that, because you have to know in Kamigawa, there are a few spots where you don't really climb, like in the swamps and in the academies that are there, but there are some cities that you can really climb on and in, and we can see here that she's probably on a rooftop of some sorts, and that might be why she has these weapons, so she can travail these roofs better. And travailing roofs is kind of like being stealthy, I guess, in Kamigawa. Her card is this. She is a ninja, which almost always means that the card uses ninjutsu as a mechanic. Return an unblocked attacker you control to hand. Put this card onto the battlefield from your hand or the command zone tapped and attacking. So usually what you want to do is block all the cards that a ninjutsu player, or at least a commander ninjutsu player, is attacking you with. But of course they are focused on having evasive creatures, flying creatures, really cheap flying creatures, for example. And you can block it, then you can switch that creature in for Yuriko. And then whenever a ninja, so this is really a ninjutsu tribal commander, you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So this is interesting in the story of Yuriko as well. Why? Because, literally all we really know, all that is canon about her, is that she steals from the rich and gives to the poor. So you kind of see that you want to see expensive things on top of your deck, and then she would distribute the damage around to all your opponents, and in a way that symbolizes how she, well, gives wealth to everyone, but in this case she damages your opponents, which is almost the same, maybe, in a way. We can also see that, yeah, while being a tiger, she's really ferocious. You can feel how she would prowl on someone. You can see the art from Yonggai Choi. I think, I never know how to pronounce these, so I always do it wrong, or I look it up and then I do it wrong anyways. We can see here that, well, she seems to feel at least at home in the city that she is in. Yeah, not really too much else that is there in the story for her, really. So she steals from the rich, gives to the poor. She stands with ninjas, and I think that is the most interesting thing about Yuriko, to be honest. And legit, you do just want to play with her because you like ninjas anyways. So let's just look at some ninjas, and let's, well, get a feel for how it is weird that Yuriko is such a good character in a way, because most ninjas really aren't. So first of all, what I really think is interesting is Yuriko does come in a pre-constructed commander deck, but she does not come in her own one. She comes with Aminato the Fate Shifter, which is a card with a very peculiar vibe around them. They're very mysterious, as in we also don't know too much about her, but this is such a strong planeswalker that, well, there must be a lot of story behind her anyways. So her abilities: draw a card and put a card from your hand on top of your library. This of course really works with Yuriko, because Yuriko wants you to have really expensive cards on top of your library, and you can pick anything from your hand and put it on top this way. Then for the -1, you can exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. Not really something that works together with Yuriko. And then -6, choose left or right. Each player gains control of all non-land permanents other than Aminato, controlled by the next player in the chosen direction. Also not something that really works too well with Yuriko, but it also kind of does, because Yuriko wants you to play with a lot of cheap, evasive creatures that you otherwise will not have too much to do with. So it's like a 0/2 flying card would be really good with Yuriko, and then if you can give that to your opponent, they really probably cannot do too much with it. A little thing about Aminato that I really like is that she's holding like a twig that is branching off in two directions, so somewhat showing that she sees all the possibilities that are there and can well, choose that way. And I think this is really the interesting part that I wanted to get at, because this fate shifting is really what is shown in the +1 ability, where you put one of your cards from your hand on top of your library, sort of making sure of what will happen the next turn, of making sure of what will happen on the top of your library. And Yuriko works with that, so they steal something from the top of your library, and sort of Aminato helps you put something rich, put something expensive on top there. Yeah. It's an interesting part, and I really don't know what it really means yet. But maybe if we go look at some more ninjas, we might see something more. So here we see immediately something very aggressive, which is usually what ninjas do. They are either aggressive or like to steal knowledge. And in this case it's both, because this one is like stealing a scroll of some kind. Ninja of the Deep Hours, 4 mana ninja. Also ninjutsu, which you will see a lot, because I think all ninjas have ninjutsu for some reason. Don't really know necessarily why, but maybe it's because ninjutsu is a ninja thing, I guess. Whenever it deals common damage to a player, you may draw a card, so we can see that it wants to steal knowledge. Silent Blade Oni is really interesting to me. It is from a card from Kamigawa, or so it seems at least, with the vibe here. It's a really big one, and usually ninjas are not that expensive. But this one is 7 mana. Also blue-black, so you also see that I think all ninjas are focused in blue-black. Whenever this one deals combat damage to a player, you may look at their hand and you may cast a non-land card in it without paying the mana cost. So also stealing knowledge. So, and this is interesting because if we look at Yuriko, she doesn't really steal anything. She just lets you look at the top of your library and draw the card. So yeah, well, I guess Ninja of the Deep Hours does it as well. So maybe it's not that interesting. Higure, the Still Wind, focused on being silent. Another ninjutsu card, 4 mana with ninjutsu. When deals combat damage to a player. So we see this a lot as well. Whenever the one ninja deals combat damage to a player, you do something. And Yuriko does this for all ninjas, making it a very cool sort of tribal ninjutsu. Or tribal ability. But this time you may search your library for another ninja. So this one gets you another ninja, review it and put it into your hand. You also can make it unblockable, making it work really well with Yuriko, of course. Then we have Mistblade Shinobi, a little bit of a cheaper one, again, with just a 1 mana ninjutsu ability. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. Well, for the 3 mana, it's just a 1/1, so that's not really the best thing to do, I think. But again, we see these ninjas, they are silent, they steal stuff, they all have ninjutsu, and they all have, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you do a thing. So that's just what a ninja is. Walker of Secret Ways, another one that doesn't really seem like someone that is too kind-hearted per se, and Yuriko is. So I think that's really the interesting part, how Yuriko still brings all of these ninjas together. But whenever this one deals combat damage to a player, look at that player's hand, which is more strong than you think. But also you can return target ninja you control to its owner's hand during your turn. Can be instant, but has to be during your turn. And I think that's cool too. You want to protect your ninjas, you want to bounce them back, bring them back in again with ninjutsu. So yeah, really a strong piece in there. But again, not really something that works flavor-wise with Yuriko. So I think we really need some more flavor in there. Here we have someone really more on the dark side, the rats, let's say, of Kamigawa. Almost always live in the swamps. Almost all, or I think always, are like the evil type of rat that just do stuff without too much reason, and they fight each other, and they fight each other mostly for power within their tribe. This one is a servant of an Oni, which is sort of demon from Kamigawa as well. Really expensive ninjutsu for 5 mana, but then whenever they deal combat damage to a player, you may put target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So you can see how cool it is to play with ninjas, or you can see the appeal at least for playing with ninjas, which is you get to steal stuff from your opponents, you get to draw a lot of stuff, and you get to flash in ninjas in and out, so that's really cool as well. And then when this one dies, the 5/4, which is a pretty big stat line, you can regenerate it. And this one is a legendary as well, so you could play it as well, but it's not really a tribal thing. It doesn't really work together with other things, just stealing stuff from your opponent. So I don't think this is a commander. Yuriko is still better because you always you get the blue part of it anyways, and that is really what makes it strong. Another one of these rats, Izumi is also what they are called. It's a 2 mana one with a really cheap ninjutsu again, so it's not too strong probably. It exiles up to 2 target cards from that player's graveyard. Pretty strong, but not game breaking or anything. It's just more of a hate card that way. another one which looks very much alike. These two. This one is for 3 mana ninjutsu. It destroys a non-black creature that players control, so that's really strong, actually. But again, really evil, really just killing stuff. The more blue ninjas were more about knowledge. The black ones are about killing or exiling or doing stuff with graveyards. And apparently if you put those together, you get stealing, knowledge, and dealing damage to your opponent. Really big amounts of damage. So I really doubt Yuriko being a good person per se. They might just lie about well, being good and giving to the poor and stuff. So that might not be the most important part of their character. But it does feel that way because it's the only real thing that differentiates her from other ninjas. Really, I would have liked it better if Yuriko would do some stuff with graveyards as well. I know that she is not a rat, she's a tiger, so she hunts rats. Maybe that's the part about that, but maybe she gets paid by the rich to kill these rats or hunt these rats down or imprison them or anything. I don't know. Because they are annoying to them and they are around their neighborhoods and stuff. And then she uses that money to give it to the poor again, which are also probably the Nezumi again. Maybe that's the thing. But she doesn't really seem protective. She just seems to have some weird values and therefore be a ninja or something like that. But yeah, let's go on to Roon. Another character without too much story. So if we look at their art, we see a plane that I couldn't really figure out where this is. I don't think it is known where this is. I've looked for it, of course, but haven't found something that really shows it. We see an ability from his staff where we see his 3 prevalent mana colors in his sort of spear staff. And then there's a sort of gate coming out of that spear. Why is that? Well, Roon is apparently someone that has to protect a different world. They protect a world that no one knows really exists. Roon has never been able to show other people that it exists, but Roon is a really good leader. He shows that he cares for his people, and therefore people follow him to protect this imaginary world, or at least a world that no one has seen before. Roon has seen visions of it, apparently, or so he says, but no one else has been able to see it, and Roon apparently is able to make an army out of this statement. We see a little bit of a building in the background. Maybe that's like his home base or something, but another thing that we do see in the canon part from the mother base is the mothership is that Roon travels around and protects his herd in a way from enemies that seem like a threat to him. So he's just really aggressive, but they don't say that. Yeah, the card itself, I had to look at this for a long time before really seeing how this works with his story. So as we can see, he is green, which you see here as well, yellow or white and blue. For a legendary rhino soldier, there are not a lot of rhinos, and if they are there, they are really aggressive, which I do seem to think Roon is aggressive as well. They have vigilance, they are protective of their herd, which we saw, and they have trample, they attack, they are aggressive. Again, time and space are just new battlefields to be mastered, which is time really a thing a portal mage thinks about too much, but not sure. Their ability is for 2 mana, you can tap Roon and exile another target creature, return it to the battlefield, so blink it. And it just comes back at the end of the next end step, so there is a little bit of a delay, and you can use this in some cases, but that's more gameplay part. you can attack with Roon and then do this, so that's another thing. So what I think is interesting, he's not able to show people this other world, but he can blink them out of this world and back in again. And apparently no one has been able to tell Roon what they have seen in this other world. So he can blink them for a little bit of time. They have to come back as well, so it's not like they have the choice to come back. This we can see from the ability itself. So yeah, I'm not really sure where they go, and I think no one really is sure where they go. But one thing that is really interesting to me is that no one knows, and this is a really prevalent theme in blinking itself. So what we often see is that in blink cards you have to have faith in the thing that is blinking you, and it just happens to you, and you just let it happen to yourself as well. It's just something that you have to believe in will be good for whatever you believe in. And Roon is the same. He just says that there is another world and people believe him because they have their faith. And that is really the blue and white part of blinking. But the interesting part here is that blinking is usually in blue and white, but Roon brings in the green part, which is just about his strength, and there's not really anything else that is green about Roon. It's not about the flickering, this part is not the green part, it's just that he is a rhino, and therefore he is green, I think. And that's an interesting part. So when I was looking at this, I started to feel like Roon is just an aggressive rhino that has found a new world apparently, or has seen it once, and now he is gathering people around him just because he likes to fight, and that's really the vibe he is giving me. So let's look at some other blink cards, and I have looked for green ones, but there really aren't any. There are some that let you put them back into your hand, but that's not really blinking. So we have Thassa, a god that is blinking creatures. So at the beginning of your end step you may exile it and bring it back under your control. I think what Thassa is doing is they are putting these people or creatures on a journey, on a divine journey to do something and then bringing them back instantly, something like that. Or they are picking someone up from the seas and bringing them to a safe haven, something like that. So again, you have to have faith in the god Thassa, and then you will be able to be transported to a safe place whenever you are in trouble on the seas. Yorion, or Yorion, I don't know what you say, but I have heard different things. I think it's Yorion. It's a 5 mana bird serpent. Companion, so really a lot of trouble around that part. When it enters, you may exile any creature and return it instantly, permanent by the way. So the interesting part here is that this is more of a physical blinking, where I think Yorion really comes in, takes these creatures into the sky and puts them back again, something like that. I've never really understood. They are a magical bird serpent, could be anything. Yeah, might be that they use like some sort of magical energy to do it, but I think they are just bringing them up into the sky and then back to the ground again. And then we have Restoration Angel, really the classical white blink card, where it also exiles them instantly. A flash flying creature as well, so comes in really at the right moment, and you can see that this man believes in his angel to protect them, and that is exactly what happens with Roon. But they also probably believe in him because of his green side, because he is so strong. They believe in him because of his strength, and I think that is really why people are starting to follow him, not the story about the other world. Cloud Shift is another example really of it being linked to worship and belief with Avacyn. Essence Flux is a little bit different. A spirit is both feathered and free, bound in some ways to its previous existence, yet able to transcend much of the corporeal. Never been able to fit this in too well with the ephemerate video. I wasn't able to do this either, and I don't think this is the Roon kind of blinking either, so that's not really fitting into anything. But we do see some more types of spirit blinking here as well. Brago, whenever deals common damage, you may exile any number of your permanents and return these. um, where I think Brago really fits Roon's type of blinking, because he is all about being the boss, being the leader, being the one that people have to listen to. And people do it because he is a ruler and because they believe that the ruler should be listened to. So I think that is interesting. This is another philosophy of listening to someone, and this is really the Azorius type of listening. And then we have Roon, who is more about the strength and more about the fighting for and protecting something, which is more of the green part that he really instills into his character. And of course, Ephemerate, whole video on that, long story. But I think this is an interesting part about Roon as well, is that the blinking or like the visions really happen to him as well. And that's really the essence of Ephemerate, really the essence of blinking, is you don't know why it happens, it just happens to you. And Roon really follows this philosophy. So he is really the perfect commander for a blink deck, in my opinion. And of course, there's this guy. We also have Fencer, who is a planeswalker that does it. Again, no green. I think Fencer does have some green colors in his art, so it might be a little bit of this. So maybe it is still green to blink stuff. This one has the +2 ability where it can blink something. And Fencer's power is, of course, well, putting people in other places. And this one is the same as Roon. It just comes back at the end of the next end step. So I think that shows us that Roon's and Fencer's abilities don't really work interplanarly, but only work on the plane itself. And yeah, that's really it about Roon. Here's a nice picture of a bike that I put in here. I've put more of these in, so it's not really random. We have Hofri the Ghostforge here. And I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee. I've let it stand here for way too long. Who is an interesting card. I have him here somewhere as well. I was planning on doing a deep dive on him anyways, but really never found enough to do with him. Really, I can show it. Really, not much use about that, to be honest, in the small part of the video that I've allocated for myself, because otherwise I would be in front of some of the cards. But Hofri is an interesting character on Strixhaven. Why? Because he entered into the Prismari College, so the blue-red college, and then it turned out that he really wasn't so creative. He just was about making a lot of stuff, and he liked making statues, so he learned a lot about that. Of course, that's fine, but it's not really the explosive thing that the Prismari care about. So Hofri looked around and talked with some other teachers, and he found out that he really liked history as well. So why didn't he join Lorehold immediately? No one knows. But right now he has the ability, which we can see in his card as well, to put spirits back onto the battlefield immediately. On Arcavios, the Lorehold students all have the ability to instill spirits into the statues of these people, and the statues have to be an exact likeness of that person, otherwise it will not work. So you have to be a really impressive artist to make a statue of someone that works. But Hofri does it during the battle. So he immediately, you can see this on the art from Darken as well, that he immediately pulls in all the stones that he needs and makes a statue out of it. The ability that I was talking about is whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you exile it. So you sort of put its spirit into the statue. And then if you do create a token that's a copy of that creature, it's a spirit as well. And spirit is kind of the same as being a statue, so that's a flavor pass there. When this creature leaves the battlefield, you may return the exiled card to your graveyard, so the spirit sort of still goes to the graveyard. And he makes them stronger and faster as well. I think it's the hasty part because he makes the statues immediately. That's why they have haste. Trample, I'm not sure. Maybe he makes them really well and they become really strong, and then that's why they trample over. But yeah, that's really what Hofri is about. He is a Prismari student, or was one. So he's really creative. He really embodies that red part of Prismari where you build a lot of stuff just because you want to build it, but he was never someone with the blue capability to change his art. He didn't really want to change his art. He wanted his art to be exactly as what he saw. So he could remake statues really well, but he would always make it exactly after the person he was making the art from. And Prismari is just a different kind of art where you need to make something new, you need to make something different and explosive, and Hofri wasn't really about that. So you can see the other parts of red as well, and I think that's interesting too. And Hofri is the first card that does have a little bit of story. It's not much. He features in a story with Quintorius, where Quintorius wants to find his lost city. He has just started his... Here we have Quintorius, by the way. He just started this mentorship with his spirit friend, and yeah, he wanted to look for it. We can see here Quintorius is a really good guy. He wants to find spirits and let them tell their story. Here we have him again. I think that's nice to look at. So here we have Asterion is a spirit that Quintorius is being mentored by, or is the mentor of. I don't know really how this works. But Asterion asks, Quint, are you ready? And Quint answers, what if we get caught? Quint couldn't help but imagine his parents' faces if he returned home in shame. Again. Last time it had cost them a useless suit of armor and weapons. This time it would arguably be worse. They lose any notion that Quint had a destiny outside of herding sheep. So the people, the elephant people of Arcavios, they're looked down upon and no one really likes them. So they are sort of exiled from cities, and yeah, it's a really sad story about that. But yeah, Quintorius has gotten the chance to get into Strixhaven, into the school, and he's really the only elephant there, which is a cool thing that he got there. But now he is really afraid that he has to go back, and the historian tells him to not think that way. Life is about risk, he says. Let's go. Quintorius walks after them, and then when he is getting to the exploration, Hofri walks up to him and asks, Quintorius, why are you not back at campus? And Quintorius really can't really say anything for himself, so Hofri goes on, explain yourself. Hofri had gained a claim at Strixhaven for rousing spirits of the dead, even without a material focus like a statue, like I said. How else could he accomplish that without having keen insight into others? So we can see that Hofri can also see these details about people before he turns them into spirit statues. And Quintorius can't really lie, he's really bad at that, so he doesn't really get out of there. So Hofri asks, why don't you join us by the fire, stay for a while, have some tea, then you can get your toolkit and return home. So I think that is interesting because, like I said, elephants are really shunned in this world, and Hofri is not about that. He says, hey, don't worry, you can have tea with us and then you can go home safely. So he really cares about him anyways. Quintorius opened his mouth to refuse, but then a quiet night with some of Strixhaven's most learned scholars. Most students would kill to have that kind of opportunity, so we can see how much respect Hofri really has in the school. These professors were active practitioners, not like the fat retired generals at Rundlestrom. So Rundlestrom is the military base of Arcavios. There has not really been much war going on lately, but Rundlestrom has these generals, and Quintorius got in there first before he came to Lorehold. So Quintorius wanted to take the chance, but on the other hand, if there was a possibility that Santafar, the old city of the elephants, was right under their feet, Quintorius wanted to be the one to find it. He thought about how Costambul dismissed him, other teacher, and then imagined his face if he found out that Quintorius Kant was the one responsible for returning Santafar to the Loxodon people. Quintorius says, I should be getting back. I appreciate the offer. I think is what he wants to say. It stops there. And Hofri says, this isn't about the tools, is it? How are things with your mentor coming? Still a disappointment? You remember Siu Logma, right? Siu Logma of Valdrashin was not a name any Lorehold student could forget. In life, she had been a celebrated scholar responsible for some of the most revered illuminated histories, including Ichor and Iron, dialogues from the Blood Age, a required text in Dean Plark, so the Chaos part of Dean of Lorehold. In death, she was, among other things, Hofri's assigned mentor back when he was a young Lorehold student. So interesting, we might see Siu Logma later as a character, I don't think so, but they were the mentor of Hofri. We didn't see eye to eye ever, is what Hofri says. What did she say about me? Oh yes, I was informed that you had artistic experience, so that's the Prismari part. But what I got was a hopeless dullard who besmirches the entire pursuit of creativity. So he was more dull than the mentor expected. I wish nothing but ill fates for you and your distant kin. All because I couldn't tell mauve from turquoise. So he had a harsh mentor, and apparently they had to draw together. Those are very different colors, is what Quintorius says. And Hofri says, indeed, will you be going back to campus? Wanted to charm Quintorius with this story. I think so. You know you can talk to me anytime. So many think they're alone. I know I did. So Hofri was alone once. Hofri nodded and proceeded back toward the fire. If Quint had any conventional mentor at Strixhaven, Hofri would have been it. How was it that someone not much older than Quint had much more wisdom than a spirit who had existed for hundreds of years? Quint finished gathering up his belongings, only to turn around and see Astorian again, waving his hand from behind a patch of shrubs. And they take them on an adventure together. And then we see Hofri never again. So that was it for his contribution to any kind of story at all. I think that we can really see that Hofri is a kind dude. Here's some water again. And that's what we should remember him for. He was artistic, apparently, but not enough to know the difference between purple and blue. Next character is Katilda, who is from Midnight Hunt. So I was surprised to see that people wanted to see her already. It's a witch from there. And the witch is the leader of the Dawnheart Coven, which is a cool thing to be, because the Dawnheart Coven is a coven that was put into life because a sort of small town got overrun by werewolves before Midnight Hunt even. And then these people ran from there, and Kaalia was the first one to gather people around and make a coven, be the first one to make the humans strong again. And I think that's cool. So she's a Celestia commander where she likes to protect her people, she likes to be there for them. She has seen a lot of stuff. She has seen werewolves destroy her home before. So I think that's why the Dawnheart Coven is the coven that is actively fighting against the night becoming a forever thing. So this town is now called Hollowhenge, and the town is now just a collection of buildings in a circle, and in the middle there is a large hole without buildings because the werewolves that were there apparently made a large explosion in the middle. And this town is in Keswick, and we see that the Dawnheart Coven is in Keswick now as well. I think that's an interesting little part there. Her card herself is just a 2 mana 1/1 protection from werewolves, so that's cool. I at first thought that was just because, well, it's a werewolf set, so it's nice to have some protection from werewolves. But the cool part about the story is that she got attacked by them before, and she will not let that happen again. Human creatures you control have add 1 mana of any of this creature's colors, so the creature that you are tapping. So really strong ability to make all your humans into mana dorks. So also the tokens, I think, because they have their own colors as well. And then for 6 mana, you may put a +1 counter on each creature you control, so they don't have to be humans. So she makes them stronger, she makes them attuned with the world or with the forest. And then her flavor says, the angels may have abandoned us, but Grindanu has not. So this is a random god, a god that gets confused with the snake god that's in her own story, but they are not the same. And Grindanu is sort of a protector of the people, but not really. No one on Innistrad is a protector of the people, it seems. She has 2 cards that she has flavor in, which is this one, Return to Nature, which is the green destroy artifact or enchantment for this set. Even Steel and Stone return to Grindanu in time. So you can see that Grindanu is really the deity of death or something, or not being there at least. And then there's Evolving Wilds, where it says Stantia blazes with new heat, Nephalia's tides are chaotic, and everywhere this unnatural frost. The land is sending a warning. So the Dawnheart Coven are the first to see these warnings. And really cool land, really cool Evolving Wilds, where we see the water, the fire, the forest. Not really a plains. And sort of swamps maybe, but we see some different types of lands here, which is what I think is cool. And then she has her own story as well. So in this story, we have Lennar, which is this person who sort of is the person responsible for making the party or making the Harvest Tide Festival a good party. And she just goes around making people happy, helping them with the party, helping them with the preparations. And and she ends up being with her sister, who is called Cinia, and we can see their difference in personality almost immediately. We see that this person, Lennar, says Katilda, the leader of the coven, promised she could fix the imbalance of the festival if it was a successful one, and Lennar wanted nothing more. When the Dawnheart Coven asked her to oversee the festivities, she knew what the witches expected from her, to do what she had always been doing. She would keep the people fed, the decorations bright, so it's cool that we see the decorations here as well, a little bit of the pumpkin stuff and the candles, of course. And the atmosphere festive, a simple job that was getting more and more difficult because people were getting scared. They heard more and more howls in the evenings, and this really scared these people. Also, we see that when Cinia, so the sister of Lennar, who we see here, put on a mask, we can see that that Lenore says, please take off that mask. She hated the mask, and she really felt bad vibes from it. You can see the mask here, by the way. She could really feel bad vibes from it, and I mean, if her sister is looking like this, I would be a little bit scared at least as well. And then Lenore instantly says, let me talk to Katilda, perhaps she can help, and please take off that mask. So if anything is going on, people of the Dawnheart Coven go to Katilda to ask for help. And so we see that they try to go to her. Cinia says fine, took off the mask, and put on another mask because everyone was wearing masks. She had made it along with Lenore's deer mask and was proud of both. But I'll keep it until they come back. She didn't believe Katilda and the Coven had something to do with the missing people. There was something about the kind look in her eyes Lenore trusted. So what if they were strange? The witches had been hermits for so long, it was natural to be cryptic about their rituals. Perhaps they didn't want their magic to fall into the wrong hands. And considering their power, Lenore didn't blame them. She had seen them split trees in half with a gesture or conjure water from the earth for thirsty festival goers. But another thought crept about her mind. What if the rest of the Coven was not as harmless as Katilda? Was the witch really in control of what was happening? So we can see that they are doubting Katilda slowly. Then at the center she sees her on top of the dais, and her Coven were doing another one of their rituals. We can see that they had started simple enough with plenty of water and beer and bright candles. There was dancing and singing that sounded more like howls, but the townsfolk did not seem to mind. Many of them, including Lenore, felt like howling themselves. So we can see that Katilda is already howling, apparently, which is a sign of being a werewolf. Katilda's costume was getting more extravagant with each passing day too. Today, along with the grassy shoulder pads and the massive headpiece meant to mirror the glory of the sun, she carried a mesh necklace made with ribbons and some sort of animal teeth. So here we can see a little bit of how that would look with these, werewolf skulls. And a cool part about this art as well is that we can see the tree-like patterns there as well. So Lenore walks up to Katilda, and Katilda turned up from her work, surprised with it written on her face. Lenore asks, what is this? And she says, they are teeth. She said plainly, werewolf teeth. They don't look like werewolf teeth. And Katilda says, well, they shifted back into human form after death, but they still have the essence of the wolf. So we can see that Katilda is really tempting these wolves and really, apparently, does not mind killing people for it. We are not your enemies, Katilda stepped down from the dais to face Jagger. Harvestide cannot succeed with witches alone. So Jagger is, by the way, a person that walked in and started to challenge the witches. Lenore says they are here to help us, but she doesn't really believe in the witches anymore. And Jagger says, by sacrificing people. He moves towards Katilda, and we can see that he is much longer than her. He could easily brush her aside with the sweep of his arm. Lenore could feel the witch and the rest of the Coven preparing for a fight. Nobody is sacrificing people, Cinia said. Her voice came from somewhere else, and here we see that she has her scary mask on again, and there's a certain power coming from her that compels the people to stop. Everyone stopped, even Jagger and Katilda, so she's not all powerful, as if someone put them under a spell. Their anger died down as fast as it had erupted, and this is an important part. You can see that Cinia, the sister, had took on the mask again. She's emanating some weird vibes. We can already feel that she's a little bit evil, and she's taking over the reins. She is really showing that she has power and showing that she can stop these doubters more than anyone else. The people around her clapped for this. The music rose again, and Jagger opened his mouth to speak, but nobody was paying attention to him anymore, neither to Katilda. the villagers were circling Cinia, so she has taken over the reins, that she has shown that she is more of a powerful leader. She goes on to show more weird stuff to them. Then it had been 2 nights since they found that mask. For the 10th time that night, Lenore ground a snake under her booth. So Lenore's really finding snakes everywhere all of a sudden. These were not there before. It was small as a human finger, brown and covered in bile, like the ones before. We can see that Cinia is getting more and more confident, and she has a strange effect on people. Wearing the mask made people listen to her in a way that they didn't listen to Katilda. So we can see that she has a really different vibe there. So they continue to party, they continue to be happy around Cinia. But Lenore needed her sister more than ever, but the Cinia she knew was gone. The last glance Lenore saw of her that night was when Katilda offered her a headpiece from their coven in exchange for her mask, because Katilda was onto it as well, this problem. The headpiece had deer antlers instead of sinuous sticks and was painted with blood mixed with mud and leaves, maybe to show that they could be fucked up as well. Lenore was not close enough so that she could not hear what the 2 women said to each other, but Cinia laughed in Katilda's face and turned away, showing no respect for her previous leader, and really not something that you should do. Later, we go into the forest and we see an egg that Cinia has been conjuring. For a moment, Lenore thought Katilda meant the woman in the shadows. Oh, so she is telling her that there is a familiar voice that is whispering, and we can see that Cinia is being taken over by the mask, and she says, "Don't move, here she comes," while standing around this egg. And then for a moment Lenore thought Katilda meant a woman in the shadows, but instead Katilda pointed her staff at her sister with calm determination. The edge of the woods sizzled with unnatural light, and Lenore could feel the beat on her face as the staff began to gather its killing energy. Without thinking, Lenore bit down on Katilda's hand. The witch howled in pain and let go of the staff. "You stupid girl," Katilda growled as she crouched in the undergrowth, fumbling for her staff. "I could have saved us." So apparently Katilda was going to kill her sister, but that's not what Lenore wanted either. Katilda was ready to kill one of her people to save her coven. So we can see here that she is green-white, but she is not really the most peaceful person. And then the woman left the shadows and came closer, her eyes glowing green. So that's their sister, but it's Sareth, the Viper's Fang. "Katilda," the woman sounded amused. "Is that you?" So I think I have that here. Sareth, this is Sareth. "Why didn't you aim at her?" Lenore shouted, gesturing to the unknown woman. "Sareth isn't the one wearing the mask," Katilda said, picking up her staff. "Your sister is. All of Sareth's power is in that mask. Cinia is consumed by it. There's no hope for her now." So Sareth calls forth the coiled one, a big snake, and Katilda laughed bitterly. "I was a fool not to see it sooner. She will destroy us all." The eggs are starting to glow, and the woman whom Katilda called Sareth lifted her staff, aiming at Lenore and Katilda. Then they are being blasted back immediately, and when the I think Katilda's vision is cleared, she saw him coming out of the hole, the big snake. A wall of scaly flesh writhing in front of her sister. Lenore's mind froze, trying to take in the entirety of it, but she could not. So that's how big the snake was. She couldn't move, her muscles frozen in fear. And Katilda says, "Don't look at him, listen to me. If he eats her while she wears the mask, we are doomed. I need your help." So Sarah says, "I need to save my sister, let me try," and Katilda nods. So we see how distant Katilda really is. Then we can hear a deep rumbling coming from the ground where the snake came from. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Sareth aiming her staff at Katilda now, vines launched from the trees like ravenous serpents and wrapped around Katilda. So Katilda is in life's danger right now, and she rose to her feet and turned to face Sareth. At her eerie whisper, a gust of wind whipped through the trees, gathering a swarm of leaves that seemed to whirl with the razor-sharp edge, attacking Sareth this time. So she's really putting faith into Lenore and hoping that she can fix this. So Lenore takes his chance and goes after her sister, but her sister says, "I cannot be saved, please run." And Katilda says, "We must destroy her," through her mind. So it's a little bit of she has different powers as well. She can speak in people's minds. She could make out the witch somewhere on the other side of the hall. Her sister's face was so calm, it made her nauseous. So Lenore moves up to her sister, and her sister says, "Rip it off," meaning the mask, of course. And then she's starting to pull, Lenore's starting to pull on the mask. And she finally manages. There's a short moment of silence, but then there's a rumbling. Lenore lets the mask go, and it tumbles down that hole, so it's not gone yet. She pulls her sister off with all the strength she had left, and with Katilda they limped back to the settlement. That was really it. Later we see Katilda again, but in these situations she's really just the witch that is there to help her govern. In this case we could really see her power of being able to make rash, or not rash decisions, but decisions to cut the arm off before it festers the whole body. And I think that's an important part of a leader, that you can make hard decisions. Here's some more pictures of water that I really liked. And then here is our last character that we will be looking at today, which is a really exciting one, but one that really doesn't have too much story. There are two short ones, and there's a lot of lore around her, but not really that much per se. So let's look at the character and how undervalued she is as a character, because this is a really cool card with a really cool backstory. We can see in the art from Yongye Choi again, by the way, that she has two sets of wings, one demonic, one angelic, or maybe this is more of a dragon type of wing. She has a cool tattoo, she wears a staff and a sword, showing that she does both magic and fighting. And she's really versatile in this way. We can see this. She is a 3 mana flying vigilance 3/3, which is already really good. But then also when she enters the battlefield, you may look at the top 6 cards of your library and show an angel, a demon, and or a dragon card from among them, and put them into your hand, so you might draw 3. Really cool card. Has 3 types of tribal that you want to work with before this becomes really strong. But it's not really the tribal part that's good, it's more that she is getting strong cards out of your library and putting them into your hand, and then you don't really care about her anymore. So that's a strong part as well, that you don't have to keep your commander around for it to be a really strong card and commander. So why does she do this? Well, to know this, we really have to look at her story, I think. So in this story, we start with this. It's a shorter one, so I might go through it all. The pebble was hazy green like the eye of a dead fish, like the eyes of the girl in the village yesterday. Runt, the green-eyed girl had said. At first Leah's Kaalia, by the way. Leah had no idea who the girl was talking about, and then she saw those fishy eyes looking straight into her own. Worthless runt. Even girls she thought of as friends joined in to mock Leah. No one wants you here. Your fingers are freakish. Are you stupid and lame? It was true, her fingers were curled like claws. Try she might, Leah couldn't straighten them completely. Even her mother, who was the village healer, couldn't fix them. Leah had never cared, at least not until yesterday. She balanced the pebble on her knuckle. She couldn't even know who the green-eyed girl was. She just asked to join their skipping game. Stupid fingers, stupid runt. Leah dug her toes into the sandy riverbank and stared hard at the sparkling river. Today was the first time her parents let her play by herself near the water. Her father and older brother were just over the rise on the field, but she couldn't see them, so she felt alone. Leah stared at the pebble. Make the green-eyed girl disappear. Instead, there was a popping noise, and the pebble crumbled in on her knuckle. Despite herself, Leah smiled as the green dust swirled away in the warm summer breeze. So right away we see a cool power from Leah, where she can pick up a pebble and she can put some power out of it to kill something else. We don't see that in her cards in any way, but it's a strong power. Unfortunately, she didn't have the power to make the girl disappear. She could make rocks crumble and that was it. Mages were rare in her village and none of the other children had any casting abilities. Her mother said it was a gift. Leah wasn't sure. It wasn't like the world needed any more dust, but her mother insisted she was special. All great mages started somewhere and pebbles are as fine as a place as any. So what's interesting is that we see that mages are so rare that just making a rock crumble is already strong enough. The village was about a mile away from Leah's family farm, and her mother was sending people there again today. Usually Leah went along, but not after what happened with the girls yesterday. I'll never go there again. The village was a ragtag collection of houses and shops built among the ruins of a castle. Before the conflux, so the conflux is on Alaria, a thing where so there are 5 sort of worlds on Alara, and they went out and went back in again, and then the worlds crashed, and we see that well, we will see later why this is important, but let's not get into it too much. The story will explain this as well. Before the conflux came and remade the landscape, the castle had been one of the jewels of the band. So the band is one of these worlds, and we can see that each of these worlds has their own colors that they work around, and we can see why it is not beneficial for band to have been put together again. They really don't like that they have been put together again, and band is of the same colors as Roon actually, which is green, white and blue. Really more of a peaceful world around strength. They do like war, but they like war because they want it to be safe, so that's why they like war, and they don't like to be put together with some of these bloodthirsty worlds. Leah was too young to remember the hellish years of torment and war that followed the merging of Alara, but she often wished she could have seen the castle in its glory days. All that was left was its high tower, I think we see it here, and the 4 corners of its outer wall. The elders said that they were blessed because the village was in a region that was much like the old band. Only the southern region had changed during the upheaval. An unnatural mountain range had clawed its way out of the earth, and so, without Red Band, it didn't have any mountains, and forever blocked passage to the sea. So we can see, I think, the conflux a little bit here. Band had been a vast realm, a beautiful land of floating castles, seas of lush grass, and the bluest skies you can imagine. Leah loved the elder stories about Old Band, especially about brave knights fighting hordes of undead monsters. Suddenly, she resolved not to waste any more time thinking about the green-eyed girl. Instead, she leaped to her feet and searched for sticks, which could serve as Grixis hordes. So, sort of a voodoo kind of thing that she wants to do. So Grixis is another world with blue, black and red. 3 colors that don't really fit this world. The only thing that is alike is blue, but the both colors use it for very different reasons. And we see that Band is getting attacked and attacked and attacked by Grixis hordes. With a fistful of twigs, Leah recited the story to her mind. It was a crisp autumn day when Eos castle was besieged by creatures too horrible to imagine. Leah mounded up sand for a castle, and then smashed it with her fist. The stick hordes poured into the courtyard. They broke through the wall. Knight Aran fought valiantly atop his horse. She was just about to unleash the ballista when something moved in one of the trees on the other side of the river. The sunlight glinting off the water made her squint, but she glimpsed someone perched on a tree branch. Hidden among the leaves, just then, a gust of wind rattled the branches, and Leah saw her watcher. Its body was covered in spotted fur, pointed ears stuck up from its head, and its face was more animal than human. "Mommy!" Leah screamed, even though her mother was far away, and her father was just over the hill. When Leah looked back, the creature was gone. Usually, Leah's family ate together and then told stories until bedtime. But two of the village hunters were missing, and her father and brother joined a search party. Leah ate her stew alone on the little stool by the iron stove while her mother comforted the young wife of one of the missing hunters. Leah knew better than to interrupt, although she desperately wanted to tell someone about the things she'd seen in the tree. Strange signs on the road to the mountains, her mother was saying to Seely, as the young woman nervously twisted the end of her braid. "They were tracking a herd that way," Seely said. Her eyes were brimming with tears. "Maybe they went up into the Midlands." Her mother noticed Leah was watching them and motioned her over. As the firelight danced across the rafters, her mother slipped an arm around Leah and pulled her close. "Did you have fun by the river today?" her mother asked. "It was such a pretty day." Leah nodded. Not sure if this is really canon that this is the mother of Kaalia, but it does seem that way from the story. Leah nodded. "Are there cats who walk like people?" Her mother's brow furrowed. "In other lands, Leah. Why do you ask?" "I saw a thing that had a cat face but a body like us," Leah said, half expecting her mother wouldn't believe her. "In the trees along the river. Seely's eyes grew enormous, and suddenly her mother was saying how late it was and bundling Leah off to bed. And maybe they could have sweet bread for breakfast. Leah fell asleep and dreamed of girls with pebbles for eyes and floating sandcastles. The next morning her father's eyes were sunken with tiredness. He hugged Leah and wanted to hear her story from the day before. People were trying to act normal, but Leah could tell something was very wrong. Everyone's faces seemed pinched too tight, and she heard them whispering about the missing hunters. At midday, Leah's mother sent her outside after she promised not to wander beyond the shadow of the cottage. But she grew tired of playing by herself under the eaves and decided to run circles around the house. The eagle flew over Eos castle. With her arms outstretched like wings, Leah ran around the corner and bashed into something. She stumbled backward and was caught by strong hands as the dark bag fell across her eyes. She glimpsed a cat-like face. They'd been waiting for her behind the cottage, when there were no windows or doors and no one to see her disappear. That night, the demon came to the village. He came while the hunters' wives were weeping for their husbands. He came while Leah's parents frantically searched for their daughter. Just as the crimson sun disappeared behind the unnatural mountains, the demon seemed to materialize in the starry sky. His presence immediately afflicted the villagers. They became weak and ill and fell to their knees. A ring of black-clad servants encircled the village, and as the noose closed around them, none had the strength to raise their hands in defense. By morning, a sickly wind blew through the open door of Leah's cottage, which was empty as the rest of the village. The sculptor surveyed his work with a critical eye. To the uninitiated, it must look like chaos, but to him, every clink and jangle of bone was perfect as harmony to the breathing of his master, Nephorox, who slumbered in the tunnels below the arena. It was early morning, the servants still in their cages. 17 minutes until sunrise, and then the supervisors would have them working again. But for a few precious moments, the world was wonderfully peaceful. The hum of locusts in the trees on the ridges that surrounded the worksite was the loudest sound. For once there was no screaming, no wailing, no scraping of bloody meat of bone. His worksite had once been a massive Matka arena where Nyan humans fought for sport. Everything in Elara had a former life, even him. He had crafted bodies from Ethereum in Esper before he realized his work had been a perverted lie. The sculptor sighed, angry at his misspent youth. Now he was an old man, but at least the master had given him a purpose, a reason to keep on living. He took a deep breath and placed one foot on the bottom rung of the ladder. Time to tally the signs. The ritual could only begin when the numbers aligned. If something was one tick off, the project would fail. The sculptor felt a ripple of panic at the thought of disappointing his master. If he failed, it would be better to cut his own throat than face punishment. The sculptor counted the rings as he climbed, 76 steps, and he was at the top. From this vantage point, he could assess how his great work was progressing from a bird's eye view. Months ago, the sculptor had removed the stone benches that encircled the arena. 560 benches. The servants dug deep pits to hold the carcasses before they were skinned. 142 pits. I don't know these numbers. Most were now brimming with discarded meat. 92, the number of knife strokes to skin a behemoth. This is a behemoth, I assume. Feeling very kingly, sculptor eased himself onto the walkway, which creaked and shifted under his weight. It was constructed from the bones of a hellkite the master had slaughtered in the high peaks. The dragon's beautiful corpse had moved the sculptor to tears. Indeed, it was the seed of inspiration for the entire project. Ethereum had no life inside of it, but bone? Bone was imbued with blood and power, energy he could harness for his master. The servants had carried the skeleton down precarious mountain paths. Once instilled, the ribs branched out and down to form a cage around the arena floor. The spine was the walkway on which he now stood. When he bent down and touched the bones, he could still feel the immense power of the hellkite pulsing through the marrow. 112, number of total hands needed to move the hellkite's corpse. 3 fingers lost. I still don't know these numbers. A hellkite, I think. The sculptor enjoyed a gust of wind. It brought a scent of honeysuckle from the golden lowlands. The warm air rattled the bones hanging from ropes beneath his feet. 769 silk ropes, 769 bones. Sometimes he wished he were a puppet master and could make these bones dance like marionettes. But that would be the master's pleasure. And all the power derived from the ritual, that was the master's reward. An abrasive metallic screech tore the sculptor away from his reverie. The twisted metal gate swung open, and new recruits filled into the arena. Banned humans from the grasslands, probably that miserable little village near the ruined castle. Lia's little village. They were bound together with rope, and the sculptor counted carefully as they passed under the hellkite's spine. 47 bodies, plus the 2 hunters they'd caught spying on them earlier. 49 bodies. The sculptor's breathing quickened. Frantically, he tallied the figures in his mind again. Was it possible? Yes, all the numbers aligned. In what way? It was perfect, and after such a long wait, it would be tonight. The sculptor dug his fingernails into the hellkite's rib and prayed that the master liked his gift. A little bit heavy. But okay. Damn. So yeah, with the story, let's look at one of the cards where Kaalia features in the flavor text. Which is Vow of Duty. A 3 mana enchantment aura, where you get to make someone vow his duty. Which makes them stronger, gives them vigilance, like protection I think, and they can't attack you or your planeswalkers. And Kaalia here says, I prefer loyalty to be a matter of respect, not of magic, but one does want what one must. And it is interesting that she likes respect, because she is kind of bad, but she only has the white color left. And she has 2 colors from Grixis, which sort of make me think she has some sort of prisoner complex for them because they killed all of her family. But for the mechanics, of course, it's cool that it is red for dragons, white for angels, and black for demons. But we haven't seen in the story yet why this is. Why can't she conjure up angels, demons, and dragons? In the previous one, we saw that she could draw them from your deck. This time, when she attacks your opponent, you may put them from your hand onto the battlefield. So she works together with herself really well. They also enter tapped and attacking. I'll have my revenge if I have to call on every force from above and below. So what is really cool about this is that she says that she prefers loyalty to be a matter of respect. She doesn't want to control them with magic. So when she is the commander of your angels, demons, and dragons, she doesn't want to control them with magic, probably because that might be a little bit too hard, or maybe she is strong enough for that, and just wants them to respect her because of her power. So we see black for her wanting power, but that's mostly because she wants respect, and we see red because of her intense emotions, and white is the only color she has left from her own world of band. Also, it's not strange for people from Alara to change colors like this. It's really a thing that a lot of characters do, because these worlds collapse together and then formed these new types of characters. But there's a second part of the story where maybe we will find out why she has changed so much. But this also confused me a little bit, but let's get into this. Leah bit the hand that pulled the back of her head. Something yelped, but didn't strike her. Instead, it set her gently on the ground and backed away. I'm Nira, it said softly, and I'm sorry we had to meet this way. Leah, so there's Nira and Leah now. Leah stared up at the cat-like person and decided it was a girl. 3 more of cat people. 1, 2, 3. Ah, there's another one here. Stood warily by, as if they felt threatened by this tiny girl glowering at them. Boys, she decided, they had manes. So this is a boy, and these are girls. Yeah. Okay. I want to go home, Leah shouted, startling all of them. Have you ever seen the ruins on the mountainside? Nira asked. Her golden fur was decorated with black spots. Blue stone jewelry dangled from her pointed ears, and the whiskers around her pink nose quivered even when she wasn't talking. What are you? Leah demanded, looking around. They appeared to be inside a cave. Torches hung on the wall and blankets had been laid out over the red dirt floor. Haven't you seen an Akado before? Nira seemed surprised. We're Sunstrikers. Now comes something interesting. Our pride is loyal to the great teacher Ajani. It's our sworn duty to keep his lands safe. So they are followers of Ajani still, which I think is really cool. These aren't his lands, Leah said petulantly. The demon that lives in the ruins is a threat to us all, no matter where we go home, Nira replied. Please, Leah said, I want to go home. The Sunstriker looked over her shoulder as if hoping her companions could make this easier. They said nothing. The demon is harvesting the bones of creatures for a ritual. Ritual? Leah asked in confusion. He's killing countless creatures just to give himself more power, Nira explained. We've been hunting him for a long time. Many of our pride have died. including most of our mages. He's taken your village, which I didn't expect to happen so quickly. Taken them where? Leah wondered if the demon had the green-eyed girl, and then felt guilty for thinking it. To the ruins here in the mountains, Nira told her. If you don't help us, they will die. I wish you didn't have to hear that, but it's the truth. Leah thought of her father and how tall he was. She couldn't imagine anything that could hurt him. Let's go see my father, and my mother is a mage. She helps people all the time. So, another thing that I really think is cool about Leah and Kaalia, of course the same person, but, is that she had a little bit of a deformity or sickness or something in her hands. And she's just honest about her feelings of of hating people that say something about it. I think that's cool. The Sunstriker looked sad. You must help her. Your family is at the ruins too. Leah hugged her knees and wondered why she didn't feel anything. This all seemed like part of a bedtime story. A cat that could talk, a demon in the mountains. Surely Nira was wrong. Her family was safe in the cottage, waiting for her. We must attack before the demon completes the ritual, Nira said. For my plan to work, we need a stone killer, and ours have all been killed. What's a stone killer? Leah asked. You are, she replied. I watched you by the river. You'll be a powerful mage one day. Breaking pebbles isn't very useful, Leah said doubtfully. Today you break pebbles, tomorrow you will smash walls. Someday, castles might crumble in your passing. Leah stared at her with awe. So that's her power? That's really strange, right? That's her power, but she commands like demons and angels. Leah galloped by on her white horse, and Eos' castle tumbled to the ground. So back to the story about Eos' castle, where Leah apparently herself galloped by. Or that's what she is thinking. I think that's it. Nira unsheathed her sword with the tip of the blade. She hurriedly drew in the red dirt. Leah watched her curiously. Like you, a dragon has a spine, Nira told her. But unlike you, some dragons have a large plate that connects to every rib. It's also where the wings attach. We call it the keystone. Keystone? Keystone means something important, Nira said. If you destroy this plate, the skeleton will fall, and then the ritual can be finished. You want me to kill a dragon? She didn't want Nira to think she was weak, but she didn't want to disappoint her either. Instead of answering, Nira sheathed her sword and took Leah's tiny hands in her own. Can you climb? She asked gently, inspecting Leah's curled fingers. Better than the other children, she promised. What is your name? Leah. Among my people, a warrior receives a new name before her first battle. May I give you yours? So that's why she has a new name, because she went into battle with the cat people. Leah nodded. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her, a warrior? In my language, Ka means power. So she is Power Leah. You are now the warrior. Power Leah, or Kaalia. You will kill the keystone, and you will bring your family home. Just before sunset, Kaalia, so that's I think how you say it, lay beneath a dead tree on the ridge overlooking the area. Except for Nira, the ragged bands of Sunstrikers had already disappeared into the trees. They would circle around and launch their assault from a different direction. Kaalia stared down at the frenzied scene in the valley. She tried to rehearse Nira's instructions, but her thoughts felt like they were moving too fast. The pointless slaughter of innocents must stop. The Hellkite's skeleton was like a horrible house. Kill the keystone, destroy the skeleton. The dangling bones swayed in the breeze and made hollow, rattling music. Destroy the skeleton, stop the demon. Kaalia whimpered, but Nira didn't move. She was watching the scene below intently. Stop the demon, bring your family home. As the sun disappeared behind the dark mountain tops, a line of black-clad people shuffled silently into the arena. Strips of black cloth crisscrossed around their throats. Kaalia didn't see her family, or anyone from the village either. "Those are servants," Nira whispered. "They want to be here?" Kaalia was horrified. She could smell a horrible stench coming from the ruins. How could anyone want to be there? "They might be controlled somehow," Nira said, as a flash of red light blinked from the ridge across the valley. "That's our signal," Nira whispered. She grasped Kaalia's hand, and the two scurried down the overgrown slope, through a gap in the crumbling wall, and crouched behind one of the massive ribs. They were only a few feet from the main floor, but Kaalia realized her teeth were chattering with fear. She clenched her jaw as the servants formed a circle around the hanging bones. Kneeling, they held out their hands with palms open to the night sky. An emaciated bald man wrapped in tattered fur strode to the platform on the northern end. He was grinning, but it was a toothless, wicked smile that made Kaalia shudder. During an earlier reconnaissance mission, Nira had discovered pockmarks along the outside rib of the curve of the rib would allow them to climb it, and very conveniently, and stay out of view of the floor. But just as Kaalia put her foot on the first notch, the ground bucked violently. The servants shrieked with glee, and the sounds of their laughter made Kaalia feel sick with fear. "Let's go," Nira urged. "We have to hurry." As Kaalia climbed, the rough service scratched her hands. The servants' chants grew louder and more demanding. A thunderous boom shook the earth, and the servants shrieked in pain. Their palms had simultaneously split open. Droplets of blood began to cascade upward into the sky. So, like this. Kaalia looked down at Nira in horror. Skin couldn't rip open on its own. Blood didn't rain up. "If you destroy the keystone, the bones will fall," Nira encouraged her. "All this madness will end." I think it's cool that we see some ribs here as well. At the top of the rib, Nira leaped onto the spine first and helped Kaalia up. A strong wind seemed to rush in from all sides, and the bones swayed precariously under their feet. At Nira's direction, they flattened themselves on the walkway as sickly fumes began to rise from below. The bones were sharp against Kaalia's belly as she inched toward the keystone. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the other Sunstrikers fighting through a mob of armed men to attack the bald man on the platform. In his haste to escape the Sunstrikers, the bald man scampered up a ladder up the walkway. At the top, he caught sight of them and howled with rage. Nira leapt to her feet. Nira drew her sword. "Do it now," she ordered Kaalia. Kaalia crouched in front of the keystone. Her feet kept slipping between the gasps in the spine. "I'm going to fall." Just inches below her, the hanging bones undulated with magic she couldn't comprehend, fusing together and then falling apart. It was hypnotizing. Kaalia didn't want to look away. "If I look away, I'll fall." "Kaalia!" Nira shouted. She pounced at the bald man, but he dodged her and strike countered. Nira raised her sword to the block, but the force of his blow almost knocked her off the walkway. For a leathery scrap of man, he was unnaturally strong. Kaalia tore her eyes away from the mass of bones below her, but she felt jittery. Terrified, how could she make her mind calm? Like it needed to be when she broke pebbles. "Shut out the world. Pretend you're somewhere else," screamed Nira. Kaalia pressed her hand against the smooth keystone, closed her eyes, and wished she were by the river. Band had been a vast realm, a beautiful land of floating castles, seas of grass, and the bluest skies you can imagine. Under her fingers the keystone grew warm. It was a crisp autumn day when Eos Castle was besieged by horrible creatures. Kaalia imagined the sparkling river rushing by her bare toes. They broke through the wall. There was rippling sound, and then her fingers felt only emptiness. Lia galloped by on her white horse, and Eos Castle tumbled to the ground. When Kaalia opened her eyes, the keystone was gone and gaping hole. nearly bisected the spine. Triumphantly, she called out to Nira, but rough hands yanked her off the walkway. The bald man was shaking her and screaming in her face. Behind him, which must have been scary, Nira was struggling to her feet. Blood matted the fur on the Sunstriker's head. "You rat," the man screamed. "You're the final number. Your blood will light the fuse." And he threw her off the side. With cat-like grace, Nira leapt after her. In midair, she encircled Kaalia in her arms and they fell together. Just before they landed, Nira twisted her body so she cushioned Kaalia's fall. Above, there was a loud crack as the spine snapped. The bald man hung on for a moment before the Hellkite's ribcage split in half and crashed down. His body slammed against the floor with a sickening thud. Bones clattered to the ground, raining down on Kaalia as she desperately tried to tend to Nira. Kaalia's vision spun dangerously. "Nira, we stopped it. The skeleton fell to pieces." "Well done, little warrior. Now flee from here. The rest of us are lost." A blast of energy radiated out from the ground, which split open and left a jagged scar across the arena. Bones and bodies flew like feathers in the wind. Kaalia slammed against the arena wall, frantically shielding her face from the debris that tumbled around her. He arose from the rift that now cut across the floor. His wings cracked and snapped as he ascended slowly into the night sky. It was as if the entire world has narrowed to a single point. Him. He whipped his blade through the air and the screams of the dying echoed through the valley. Fighting for consciousness, Kaalia glimpsed an image of the Sunstriker's face swirling in the smoke above her. And then the world went black. When Kaalia woke, a weak sun was rising in the east, casting a white pall over the devastation around her. Nothing moved amid the wreckage. There were no sounds except the distant hum of locusts. The bodies scattered around the wreckage were jarred beyond recognition. Across the valley, half of the ridge was gone, with just a smoking crater in its place. The demon had escaped. She knelt beside the last place Nira had laid. Kaalia felt empty, like her insides had been ripped out, and there was just shadows left instead. "I will kill the demon. I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way to make him suffer. Out in the vast wilderness, that is where she would find her revenge." And that's an interesting end to Kaalia's story. And you can see why it confused me. Because Kaalia is banned. Kaalia has 3 colors. So it's white, which is still there. It's green and it's blue. It's not these. And she took on these colors, which red might be logical because the cat people were Naya. So they had red mana and green mana, as well as white mana. So this part might be logical, but then there's black mana, which is from Grixis. So the red and black mana is from Grixis apparently, I think. Or it might be that it has nothing to do with the colors on Alara, and it's more that the white is still because she cares about her people who are now dead. The red are from her emotions, and the black is because she needs this power for respect again, or something. But it still doesn't explain why she grew wings. It doesn't explain why she can summon angels, demons, and dragons. Because she is a mage that can make stones crumble. That's her power. So it's interesting to me how she is just a human that can make stones crumble in her own story. She becomes angry at the demon, and then we time skip and we see that she can command angels, demons, and dragons. So one thing is that in that story she made a dragon crumble. So she held the keystone of a dragon and made it crumble, which might be why she has power over dragons. She went after a demon, so that might be a part of a story where she got to control the demon maybe, or she defeated it so badly that it pleaded for its life, something like that. So that might be also why she is talking about respect so much in her in the flavor text on other cards. But then angels, we haven't seen her interact with any angels, but it might just be because she is banned and angels were there already. So maybe it's just that it's a type of hometown advantage, something like that. Maybe she has gotten her own army. Maybe she went traveling the world more now that she didn't have a home anymore. Like the stones that she makes crumble, she might, as she has seen her own old band castle crumble as well. And maybe that's why she now wants to see everything crumble. Something like that. But it isn't explained, so it's not canon, any of that. But she did interact with the demon and the dragon, so that's a little bit of the story. So yeah, that was the last character as well. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.